Let's go, Rider Nation.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Yeah, here we go. It's a feeling now. Hit 'em high, hit 'em low, 'cause we're dealing now. Everybody's giving it all they got, 'cause we're ready.
This is the Piffles podcast, your Saskatchewan Rough Riders fan podcast. Thanks for joining us here this week. I'm Alex.
I'm figuring out technology.
Yeah, we hit the start button before you were ready.
If you waited till I was ready, we might have this episode by next week. Maybe.
Yes.
We are your Saskatchewan Rough Riders fan podcast. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcast, watching on YouTube, watching on SaskTel Max TV on demand. Thank you very much. Piffles podcast is brought to you by our great friends at Dairy Queen on Elphinstone Street and Sask Drive in Regina. And with this little Chinook type weather we have going on in Saskatchewan right now, there is no better time to get a blizzard than right now.
Oh, it's so beautiful out right now. Just some nice ice cream, +2 today. Why not?
It's basically spring.
Which means it's almost pumpkin spice season, Steve.
What the hell?
We talked about
Come
that at the
on.
Riders Fair, actually. This is the second time in a
Way
week
too
that-
early for that. We're not even past Strebler could be a rider season yet. Can we at least get through free agency
You
before we
are
worry about pumpkin spice?
getting so far ahead of yourself right now with the Strebler talk because it's coming today.
No, it's not.
It's not in the lineup. It's not in the document that we have with Cole's notes of what we're going to talk about. It's in my document. We're talking about Chris Strebler.
Also, thank you for being such a big supporter and fan of the CFL and myself personally.
The best part
Beetlejuice
is
rules, guys. Beetlejuice rules. You said it 3 times. I had to.
the best part is when the video takes over and kicks us out, we can still see each other. And the eye roll that Steve gave as soon as you hit that, Greg,
I know.
that was worth it just for that alone.
You can pretty much have that eye roll on loop every time. That's the go-to reaction.
Well, we got a lot to talk about here on the Piffles podcast this week, talking Rider football. The Ed Hervey Tampering Window opens up on Sunday. So let's talk about it. Let's get to the opening kickoff. And I know I didn't jump off with the, follow us on Twitter, X. Here's our, you guys know where to find us. We're easy to find. You got the names on the screen if you're watching. So there you go.
No pity follows up.
No, you almost got one though. You almost got one, I think, on Blue Sky.
Oh, really? I should
think
actually
so.
check in on that a little more than I do because I'm not
Maybe
posting anything. But
Maybe it was for TikTok. I don't remember. Which we will try to do. I don't know how good it'll be. Not very. If it's anything like this podcast, it's not going to be very good. But we're going to
Moderately successful.
Yeah. As Chris Jones would say. Well, we'll start with the official rider signings that we've had over the last week since this show, since last week's show, and there has been lots to talk about. So, of course, the day after we do the show on Tuesday last week, on Wednesday, that's when we get all the news coming out. And of course, it was we'll start with Nelson Lacombo on defense. Defensive back was signed for another year. We talked about the defensive backs last year and maybe a potential ratio change if they don't sign him. Who knows what's going to happen? Well, the Riders re-signed Lacombo, which basically tells me that they're going with safety as a Canadian position. Or could he be possibly flipped out to corner and we could go with 2 Canadians? What do you guys think of one of the Lacombo signing and 2 what they could possibly do in the defensive backfield?
Well, Lacombo's always had the skills, and like we said, I think he's a better corner. And now if they sign him and are expecting him at safety, now all of a sudden we've got 3 potential safeties with Ford, Dalkey, and him. I'm hoping they're thinking about moving him out to corner because that not only that helps you with ratio flexibility, but that's his more natural position.
I don't think you make this signing unless either you think of him as just a special teams guy or if you are looking at flipping him out to corner. They've already got Ford and Dalkey under contract. Likely they'll play one of those two as your starting safety. I think they do flip him out to corner, and I would not be upset about it. He didn't look out of place at corner as much as he did at safety. He doesn't really seem to have that situational awareness that you need at safety outside of his nice pick in the BC playoff game, which was absolutely beautiful. But I'd be all right with him at corner.
I got in trouble on Rider fans from one of the posters there, who I actually know in real life. I'm not going to say his name, but I said that was a duck by Vernon Adams Jr. on that interception by Lacombo, and that any pro player should have had that interception. So while, yes, he was in the right place at the right time, made a good read and made the play, and kudos to him for doing that, I think anybody could have done that. So,
but when you look at him, the biggest knock on him was not being in the right place at the right time. So for him to kind of, as the season progressed and as we got to the end of the year, you started to feel like he was getting into that ability to be in the right spot, which is half of the job of safety. Is not just making the plays, it's being there to be able to make them.
If we could find some hybrid of a player who can make that interception at like Lacombo did and progress, but then also put the fear of life into some players like Jaden Dalkey did to begin the year, where he was knocking around Edmonton players. I mean, we had that. His name was Tyrone Brackenridge. But if we can find a modern day, guy that can do that, that would be obviously the most ideal situation. Lacombo, I mean, Canadian, you want to try and bring back your Canadians after talking to Corey Mace. He's big on continuity, so that's just another piece of that puzzle. And then now we have 3 starting defensive backs returning from last year with Lacombo. I'm assuming that he's penciled in as the starter, but might be more of a rotation with Dalkey and Ford, seeing how training camp kind of shakes out. But you have that safety spot returning, you have Roland Milligan, and you have DeMarcus Fields coming back. Hopefully Marcus Sales, but we'll see what happens over the next, week and a half once the tampering window opens up and offers start rolling in. Ideally, Sales is back, or we know of, another potential free agent DB coming here, which we will get to in a little bit, who we think it might be. Then you just have an open competition for the last corner spot. So if they lock down 4 of these spots before, heading into training camp, they'll be doing all right. So offensive line, we'll go there. Trayvon Tate was re-signed for this season. He was brought over from after he told Calgary to release him. We signed him pretty quick, and I mean, with the amount of O-linemen that we had, he was one of them, and he actually played very, very well at right tackle, kind of solidified that at the end of the year. And with Trevor Reed going down to the NFL with the Vikings, while that left tackle spot's completely open, Tate kind of has the inside track on that with Jamarcus Hardrick coming back for right tackle. So to me, he was one of the must signs, and I'm very happy that Trayvon Tate's back for 2025.
Well, 100%. With Reed going down there, this basically allowed Tate to just kind of basically stroll into possibly a starting position on this offensive line. So it was a great signing, and great. Once again, we have got great depth with great coaching on the offensive line. So.
Well, and then you factor in also Jamarcus Hardrick taking what we assume is some kind of pay cut or contract restructuring. The one thing that we've lacked over the last few years, yes, is stellar O-line play in general, but also continuity on our O-line. Outside of that question mark at center with Peter Godber, we're coming back with much the same line we finished last year with, and that's not a bad thing. It's Trevor. I can't say anything about Trevor Reed having left the Vikings. He's dead to me. So it's sorry. Can't leave to the enemy. That's almost as bad as signing with the Stampeders.
Just ruthless tonight, aren't you, Steve? Well, we'll talk more about the O-line here. You mentioned Jamarcus Hardrick restructuring his contract to some sort. It was on the CFL transactions page. Same with AJ Ouellette, who restructured his contract. The assumption is that it's less salary against the cap, more playtime incentives or signing bonus, something like that. But something just to knock down that number on the cap. So anything that they can do, even if it's, $10,000, if you can throw $10,000 at a free agent that's kind of debating between you and another team and you really, really want them, you can throw an extra take 10K at them. It might sway them over. So all these moves make it's a domino effect, right? So.
Well, and that's the thing about the CFL. I know of a defensive lineman who didn't sign here over $5,000 because it became such a battle with O'Day. So yeah, that $10,000 might not seem like a lot for pro football, but it makes all the difference when it comes to getting a guy's name on paper.
Yep, totally. Another signing, this one out of the blue, defensive lineman Shane Ray. Now, I'm a Denver Broncos fan, and Shane Ray was a first-round pick back in the peak Von Miller era days. This is like 9 years ago. Was supposed to come in, be the next big thing in the NFL. I don't want to call him a bust because I think it was just a lot of injuries happened to him, but he never lived up to the hype. When he did play not quite a full season, but a very close to a full season, he had like 8 sacks in the NFL. So he put up decent numbers, but constantly had wrist injuries. Eventually came up to Canada, played with the Toronto Argonauts, missed a whole bunch of time. Then won the Grey Cup with them in 2022, had 6 sacks in 7 games with the Argos. And of course, their defensive coordinator at the time was Corey Mace. So Corey knows him quite well. Went back to the NFL after that, jumped around a couple places in 2023, signed with the Titans in 2024, didn't make the team, has been unemployed since. So your guys' take, and I think, Steve, we're going to debate on this a little bit, on Shane Ray. So Greg, why don't you go ahead? What's your thought on that signing?
Decent enough signing. Obviously, pass rush was one of our, I would say, weaknesses last year, but when you're leading sack getters, defensive tackle, that's not really great for your rush. Look some stuff up on him. Apparently he's meaner, he's leaner, ain't no in-betweener, dreamer, and good God, he's a believer.
That song rules so much.
Are you okay?
I got
No,
nothing.
the correct
from
question
Steve.
is, are you Jimmy Ray?
Or Shane Ray?
There you go. All comes full circle now.
Yeah, full circle.
It's been a long
I'm
time
gonna
since
get-
I've heard Are You Jimmy Ray? I'm pumped to go listen to that immediately after we're done this. I love that song.
That song is bad. Like, looking up the lyrics, I'm like,
It's so good.
why was this song popular?
Oh, it was not popular. It was not. I think it
had its time.
It got radio rotation and like play on Much Music because I listened to it and watched it on loop nonstop. I'm pretty sure I'm the one that gave him his 15 seconds of fame. So sounds like you're
The entire
indifferent,
song dedicated to tell you who the guy is, and you still don't know who the guy is by the end of the song.
Look great though.
But yeah, no, the like I said, the writers. I'm assuming he came in cheap. I don't see Jo busting the bank for him, and it's going to be another person on that rotation that they so desperately need right now.
You know, the one thing that a Corey Mace defense needs is guys that can get to the quarterback. His goal as a defensive coordinator, head coach, whatever, is to wreak havoc, create turnovers, and get the ball back. We didn't have that last year. We had pretty decent linebacking play, more or less solid defensive back play, but we had stellar linebacking play. Would that be better?
There you go.
Yes.
But the one weakness that we had was we just did not get to the quarterback. Again, our leading sack getter was Micah Johnson with, was it 6?
6.
Now sacks were down across the league last year, but that doesn't matter. In the end, we weren't getting to the quarterback, and Shane Ray, when he's healthy, is a guy who can get to the quarterback. You showed his CFL numbers, 6 sacks in 7 games, and he was pretty consistent with that. It wasn't, 3 and 1 and then a bunch of games off and then, 2. It was a sack, a sack, a sack. And that's important. That's what you need. So I'm a huge fan of this signing. And he's not old. He's 31. I think he'll be 32 when the season kicks off. So he's still in relatively good age for a defensive lineman, and he'll do his job. And if not, like you said, he probably came in pretty cheap.
Well, and that's the good thing is I think he did come in on the lower end of the scale in terms of pay. They're probably not breaking the bank for him. So that's a pro. Your best ability is availability. And this guy just has not shown it his entire career. Yeah, those 7 games where he in 2022 with the Argos, very, very solid. But outside of those 7 games in his pro career, he's played out of 9 years, like 50 games. Like he's just not available. So how long until he gets injured? That's my concern. Is I want guys that can come in and be healthy. If he is, I am more than happy to eat the crow because I'm a Denver Broncos fan. I know what he was supposed to bring to the Broncos with Von Miller. And when you pair him with another rusher on the edge, like him and Malik Carney on paper, that sounds wonderful. That really, really does. Is it going to be that way though? So I don't know. I feel like, and I've said it before on this show, that defensive end should be a fairly easy position to recruit in terms of finding an American to come in, an outside linebacker from a 3-4 defense from the States. You should be able to find some of those that can get after the quarterback. How many guys are out there bull rushing, tackles all the time? Should be able to find someone. And that's not a slight on Shane Ray, but I want somebody who's going to come in and be here. And I'm not sold that it's going to be Shane Ray.
But we also need to remember that the roster isn't made in January. Like this could be you sign him now, he doesn't make it through training camp. Like this could be a Vince Young situation where
I won't go that far.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like,
could
you sign
be,
a guy that doesn't mean he's going to be on the starting roster day one, right? So see what he's got. That's what this is. See what he's got left in the tank, and I'm assuming his relationship with Mace was probably a catalyst.
Well, and actually, he did a podcast back in December, actually, and thanks to whoever posted this on Rider Fans, that Shane Ray actually credits Corey Mace for him falling back in love with football. So the relationship is there. And when he went to Toronto, Corey Mace was like, "Okay, you're the vet. Like it's year 2 in the CFL. Like you're not a vet of the league yet, but you're the vet. What you say goes. You got to get these guys in line. And here's what we're gonna do, and you make sure they do it." So to put that leadership on Ray, I mean that's a compliment, absolutely, for a guy in his second year up in the CFL. I would expect that's kind of the case this year. You're a vet, you've been around, you've won a Super Bowl, you've won, a Grey Cup, you've been on those teams, you know what it takes to be a champion. And Corey Mace told us that 2024 was we set things in place, but now 2025 is going to be the players keeping that in place. It's not up to the coaches anymore. It's up to the players to do the schemes and play the game, right? So, I mean that's a good thing, and like I'm not against the signing. I just don't love it. I don't know. But
I do need to reach out to Rob Vanstone because I do wonder stats wise how many guys in the CFL have won a Super Bowl, won a Grey Cup, and been first round draft picks in the NFL. I feel like that's a really, really small list of names. Well, has nothing to do with the particular signing, just that obscure fact that Rob Vanstone will know like that.
Well, when you add in a first round NFL draft pick, you're probably looking at it might only be Shane Ray, because usually those guys just stay in the NFL or else they're out of football completely. So not very many of those guys come up to the CFL to begin with.
Johnny Manziel is only short a Grey Cup and a Super Bowl. So.
And a Super Bowl.
So close.
So close.
Poor guy got drafted by Cleveland. He knew that was never going to happen. And one more signing was a running back, Trent Penix. Big dude, 6'2", 234. That's a big running back. I personally don't expect him to make the roster, but I mean, with Armstead and Ouellette obviously back, very, very tough for you to crack the roster unless you just absolutely dominate in training camp and preseason or there's an injury. But if you're not going out and signing these guys, Jeremy O'Day isn't doing his job. So
my first thought when my first thought when we signed a running back was, hey, this could be our next kick returner with Alford coming back. But I don't think you're going to see a lot of 6 foot, 230-pound kick returners coming north. There's nothing to get excited about this one. If he makes the roster, I will be beyond shocked. But again, bodies in camp aren't a bad thing, especially after a year of injuries from AJ Ouellette.
My first thought was when I saw how big he was, is if he runs over a guy, Steve's going to buy a jersey.
I still stand by the fact Keith Toston could have been a legend.
Well, for you, he is. So that's all that matters.
Always.
He's a legend of this podcast anyway.
Yeah. Should find out what he's up to nowadays. Steve, that's your homework for next week. Go find out what Keith Toston is up to.
My guess would be an Uber driver. That seems to be where running backs go.
I guess so. Yeah, Corey Sheets was doing that for a while.
Oh. And Kenton Keith too.
Yeah. I'm a Colt. Speaking of,
I'm a Colt.
Yeah.
There we go.
There's the segue I was waiting for.
Segue.
The Indianapolis Colts rating our talent once again. Happened the day after we record last week, of course. Joe signing a futures contract with the Colts in the NFL. So obviously when this happens, you want the guy to succeed. You hope you never see him back because you like the player, you like the guy, you want him to do his best and make all that money in the NFL and become a superstar. So you don't want to see him back, but it hurts to see him go, and you want him back because you like a guy like this. So where does that leave the Riders at wide receiver? We talked about the receivers last week. Now, is there a potential ratio change? So with Del Duncan Busby and Joe, to me, they were penciled kind of together as that third Canadian starter because you have Keyshawn Johnson, Sean Bain. Assuming they're gonna, I'm assuming that they're putting Sean Bain on the 6-game list to start the season, and then you have Dante Myers as well too. So you have 2 Americans and probably 3 Canadians in that receiver group. Now that you lose a Joe, a depth piece, a big body blocker as well too, are you flipping that ratio and going with 3 Americans? Do the Riders become buyers now in free agency for an American receiver?
Well, we kind of touched on it. If they switch out Lacombo over to cornerback, that gives you some flexibility in the ratio. I have a hard time seeing them getting off 3 Canadian receivers. There's enough guys out there, and I'm surprised Mitch Picton hasn't re-signed yet. I thought for sure that would drop an hour
next day
after they released a Joe. But when I co-hosted the Sports Cage this past Friday, and the Riders made Mitch Picton available to the Sports Cage, and I'm like, okay, so they're announcing his signing today. They got to be announcing his signing today. Why would they let a pending free agent on the radio when they're arranging the interview? And no, he's just like, yeah, no, let my agent handle it. There's no pressure, no nothing. I'm like, what? Okay.
I think we were all pretty much in agreement that we thought that Mitch Picton signing was imminent. I don't know that it is. If they haven't signed him by now, I feel like they're walking away from him, and I'm not that upset about it. I love Mitch Picton. I love what he's done for this team. He's that typical, lunch pail receiver that, Saskatchewan people have grown to love, but they can do better at that spot. If he comes in as that 4th depth guy behind your Del Duncan Busby, maybe, that veteran guy that can maybe show him the ropes a little bit, sure. But beyond that, I'd rather they go American and swap the ratio than be forced to use Mitch Picton again.
Well, if they don't switch the ratio, they go with 3 Canadians. You're hoping that Sean Mims is ready to be the backup to all 3 of those Canadians, Del Duncan Busby, Sam Emilus, and KSB, of course. And you might be active in free agency, at least getting some sort of depth piece, whether it's, a Drew Wolodarski, whether it's a Keon Julian Grant, something like that.
Colton Hunchak's available.
Yeah, he's going to be available for a very long time. I promise you that. Or you go in the draft again and you go with another high pick on a receiver, which ideally they've done that so often and they found good receivers on this team that I don't feel they should have to do that this year. But if you want to keep that ratio, you might have to.
And at this point, if the Riders do that, I trust whoever they draft to be an elite receiver right out of the gate. That's just that's O'Day's money with drafting receivers. Period.
Well, that's it. Like I think they do take at least one receiver in the draft. They got a Joe in the 7th round this past year. Like he came in after DDB. So
and Mims.
And Mims, yeah. So
or Mims might have been the 8th round pick. Sorry.
Yeah, either way, like O'Day has very good history drafting receivers. I think what's his name? The guy that retired right away.
Terrell Jana.
Jana, that's it. I think that's his only miss, and he actually looked not bad in preseason. He just spent 1 year up here and said, "No, that's okay. I'm retiring."
I wonder if maybe the Riders, we've heard these rumors of maybe them being active at the receiving spot in free agency. Maybe they throw a big money offer back at Justin McInnis. There's your ratio flipping receiver that would I bet you he'd look really good in Ryder green. We might have to see if we can do some photoshopping to get a good picture of him in green, but might be tough.
I think if they do go free agents shopping for receivers, they're going American. But at the same time, I don't really imagine that's the plan. I kind of hope it's not the plan. We've seen what happened when you spend a big time money on free agents, receivers. It doesn't usually pan out well. And the drop off from a Eugene Lewis to a Keyshawn Johnson, when you look at it, that drop off isn't that huge. Yes, I would take Eugene Lewis over Keyshawn Johnson, but for an extra $225K, I would not. Right. So you got to balance that out. So would they go after a Dalton Schoen or Kenny Lawler? I honestly doubt it. I don't think they would go with a big name like that.
But remember, there's a difference between a rebuild and a retool. I learned that this week.
Oh, you set the Bomber fans off again this week. RIP your mentions.
No.
I was shocked.
It's almost an art form.
Yeah, I was shocked
for very well
to see that Bomber fans were ganging up on you. That I did not see that happening.
No.
Remember, at Greg on drugs.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the Ed Hervey Tampering Window, aka the CFL free agent communication window, opens on Sunday at 11 a.m. where teams get 1 full week to talk to players and their agents, pending free agents, and they could submit formal offers, which have to be registered by the league. So if you offer it, it's a binding contract. If the player takes it, you can't go back and be like, oh, you know what? Just kidding. We're gonna do it for like, 5-10K less. No, that's binding. So we're gonna find out starting on Sunday where free agents are going to end up, where they're gonna go. So got you guys to do a little bit of homework and said, give me your top 3 players that Jeremy O'Day should be contacting right at 11 o'clock, 11:01 for the Ed Hervey Tampering Window. And so we all did this, 9 total names. 8 of them were different players. So I'm surprised we really didn't double up on these. So Greg, why don't you go ahead? Your top 3 that you want to see in green and white.
Well, we talked about it a lot when it came to defensive backs. So I was very defense heavy. Deshaun Amos, he's a guy I've been a big fan of. The Toronto relationship with Mace obviously is huge. So I think that is a very good possibility, and he's one heck of a defensive back. Who else did I pick? Nick Usher out of Hamilton.
Yeah,
Pass rush.
defensive lineman.
That's we just discussed that. Our pass rush, we need it. And then Nick Taylor out of Winnipeg. One, it hurts them, and I think he's a really good defensive back. He's underrated. Was underrated in that defense last year.
All right, Steve, you're up. You're 3, and one of them was the same as Greg's. You had Deshaun Amos as well.
I think Deshaun Amos is, if not a must sign, he is as close as it gets. And the relationship with Corey Mace there just would be icing on the cake. I also had Terrell Ford. I think you get the Canadian aspect, have him and Lacombo as that corner spot. You got depth there. So you're not worried about that ratio flipping. If, say, Terrell Ford gets hurt, you throw in Lacombo and you're still rolling with that same flexibility. So I think he'd be the big one for me. And then I believe I had Sean Oakman as my third one, although I'm not as sold on that as I was when I gave you my list of names. I think I might swap that one out. I think for him that's just a name that keeps getting traction in my brain, and I don't know why. I'm going to switch it out to Lucius Purifoy. And he was on my list originally that I sent you. And I know he's been suspended for 2 games. After learning what it was, I'm not going to give him heck for that. It wasn't performance enhancing drugs. But for me, it comes down to solidifying that safety spot. And we need to do that. And even if it means swapping that ratio, moving Lacombo and your forwards out to defensive back, and having that big name at safety that can do the position well would be my go-to.
And another guy you'd have to try and Photoshop into a Rider jersey there.
Trying to make it hard on Greg to really make him have to do some work for this year.
Just like you guys, I focused on the defense as well. I did have one offensive player though. But on defense, I went with Robbie Smith, defensive lineman with the Argos, Canadian as well too. So if you can get him and Charbel DeBeer as your Canadian starter and have them in the rotation on defense, I think you'd be doing wonderful on the D line there. I originally put Mike Rose, but he's also not a potential free agent. He is a free agent right now because he got cut by the Stampeders the other day. So rumors are the Riders are talking to him. So who knows? He might be a potential replacement for Micah Johnson if Micah
breakfasts are on the way though. They're definitely on the way.
I don't understand that reference.
Because Kadeem Carey.
Oh yes,
complaining about cereals and bagels.
Yep.
That's all they got in Calgary.
I forgot about that. Yep, that's fantastic. Yep.
But I took Mike Rose out. I put Tyrell Ford. Same thing, Canadian. You put him and Roland Milligan together, that's 15 interceptions between the two of them. Those were the 2 best defensive players in the CFL last year. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Tyrell Ford comes to Saskatchewan, but you have to at least call and inquire. I think if O'Day doesn't do that, then he's not doing his job. So, but the guy on offense I took was an offensive lineman, and it sure seems like the Riders need a starting Canadian offensive lineman, and we're going to talk about that coming up right away. I went with Liam Dobson out of Winnipeg. He's a monster of a dude, and the Bombers are going to have to shed salary somewhere. That might be one spot that they're going to have to. And if you can hurt the Bombers and improve yourself, you got to get better in the trenches on both sides. And when you have Furland and Fry kind of locked in as 2 of the 3 interior spots, and right now it's Noah Zur as your other interior starter. Nothing against Zur, but he's not Liam Dobson. So I think they'll be active. A lot of people are saying that it's David Beard out of Hamilton is who the Riders should be targeting. But I think for sure they'll be going after one Canadian offensive lineman somewhere here in free agency. So I went with Dobson. But we'll start hearing on Sunday when what players are going where. So that should be a really interesting week coming up.
Who's going to be sitting at the airport on player watch?
Steve, you can go do that, and then you can get players to give you the finger again.
It has been a while since I've been flipped off by a player, so let's
Just
at the airport specifically. Yeah.
just don't wear your jersey, or else like
Yeah,
Aaron
hack.
Bonham. Yeah,
Yeah,
they'll get mad at you.
God forbid
Yeah.
a fan podcast should show, passion.
Well, there's the opening kickoff presented by Kathy Festian of Royal LePage Regina Realty. Jumping to our Churchill Brewing Company odds and end zones. We have 2 deep dives to get to this week. Offensive line and then the special teams. Which should we do first?
I don't know, but I just love that we're still grinding like 9-year-old axes. I really do.
Do we do anything better than grind old axes?
Definitely not podcasting.
First is Shane Ray. Now it's this. Yeah.
I think the O line is the big one.
Okay. Well, let's talk offensive line. I like where the Riders are at sitting with their tackles. So let's talk about who they have under contract. We'll go with the Americans first. In alphabetical order, they have Jacob Brammer. So last year he came in, played guard, played tackle. One of the 6 guys that played right tackle after Hardrick got hurt. Did pretty well. Wasn't a superstar by any means, but he was solid. So to have him come in and be a depth piece in camp and at least push in that left tackle competition is a good sign for me for Brammer. Jamarcus Hardrick. Yoshi coming back, obviously on a restructured contract. He's the right tackle. Assuming that his rehab and everything is going well, as long as he stays healthy, he's the guy at right tackle. So,
and even if he's not healthy, God forbid, his leadership and his enthusiasm is infectious. Like all the videos of him in the locker room while he's injured, talking to the team, coaching him up, getting him going. Like the dude is a true leader through and through.
Well, so often you see guys get hurt and they're out for the season and they just leave. And Hardrick was here all season, and like you said, he was that presence that you really need in a locker room that really boosted spirits. He was right from day one in camp. He was just one of those fun-loving guys that you need around the office, and hopefully he can stay healthy so he can do it on the field as well as he does it off the field.
Well, he was the guy that was holding up, what was it, Shea Patterson after Patterson's first win in the locker room. He just had him up on his shoulders. So he's a monster, and hopefully he's healthy because he is up there in age. So that not a concern, but there is that aspect. So hopefully the health is there and he can lock down that right tackle spot for all 18 games. Nick Jones did play a little bit of tackle, right tackle. They shifted him back to guard when all the injuries happened. I'm okay with him coming back as a depth piece. I don't think he's going to make the active roster by any means. Might be worth a practice roster spot this year, but good depth to have around at least at the start of training camp.
Yep. Not much to add to that one.
Nope.
Brandon Kemp. He's a newcomer, comes to us from the Hamilton Tiger Cats, was just signed a couple weeks ago. Played tackle for the Ticats. I think he started, it was a handful of games over the last couple of years. So another guy that could push at that left tackle position, could push at right tackle as well too. So another guy there. And then we just mentioned him off the top of the show, Trayvon Tate. Came in and really solidified that right tackle once he got up to speed, and to have him potentially flipping over to left tackle and be that in-house leader right now for that starting spot at left tackle. I expect him to be there, and I expect him to play very, very well.
The thing that stands out for me most about the names that you went across there with your Tates and your Hardricks and your Brammer, Nick Jones, all of those, that's a lot of guys to fill 3 roster spots. I don't see them keeping around any more than that, especially at Americans for tackle unless they really do have a ratio flipping idea in mind and going, 3 O linemen and 3 American O linemen, which would be a shock to say the least. It's not a weakness anymore, which is nice, but there's a lot of guys there that if they make it through day one at camp, I'll be genuinely surprised because it's pretty safe to assume Hardrick's got one spot and Tate's got the other. If not locked down, they've got a pretty good firm grip on it.
And then the other American on the roster right now who is a pending free agent is David Murray. He was one of the guys that actually didn't play last year on the offensive line. I know there was 2 of them that didn't play, and he was one of them. So I don't expect they'll bring him back, but who knows?
Hey, they basically carpetbagged the guy got him to retire out of college. Who was that? What's his name? One game.
Yeah, brought him back for the one game last year.
And
went back to Auburn.
Yes.
Okay, you guys keep talking. I'll Google it.
Well, yeah. So if he can't play, if they legit go, hey, can you play this Saturday? And then once you're done, you can go home.
Brandon Council.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. So Council does one game, shows up for a week of practice, does one game, and Murray still can't crack the roster. That tells you how much they don't need him.
All right, that's fair.
They were looking into the stands to find somebody before they were ever going to play him.
The good thing about all the injuries that we did have last year was that it gave guys experience, plenty of meaningful experience, not just preseason or at the end of the year kind of thing, like the Brammer, Nick Jones, Trayvon Tate. They got a lot of playing time. So it's been the tackles have been an issue over the last handful of years here for the Riders. And now all of a sudden we're feeling pretty confident about it. And that's after losing our starting left tackle to the NFL. So things are looking up there on the offensive line, at least from the American position. Now the Canadians. So again, we'll take a look at who's under contract first, alphabetical order. Logan Ferland still pisses me off. He did not win Offensive Lineman of the Year. Started 4 different positions, excelled at 4 different positions on the offensive line. Played all 5. I mean, the guy's a beast. I don't even know what more we can say about him other than he's the best offensive lineman in the CFL right now.
100%. Like I don't care if the league says it's Ryan Hunter. He can keep his little Dollarama trophy. The most outstanding lineman, the most outstanding lineman was Ferland. Bar down. Stats prove it. The gradings prove it. Like Hunter wasn't even the best graded lineman on his own team and somehow walked away with that trophy. It's a travesty.
What else can we say about the guy? You can lock him in at whatever position he wants to play. I hope he's our starting center to go into next year. I think he excelled out there. Be interesting.
Well, and that's the big question is where is he going to play? Is it going to be center? Is it going to be guard? Because he did play better at center than Peter Godber, who's a free agent, but that's not his natural position. That's not the position he wants to play. From what I understand is he wants to stay at guard, but he's also the ultimate team guy, right? So he'll go wherever the team needs him to. And I'm sure in training camp, we'll see him line up in 4 or 5 different spots again, but it depends on what they do in free agency. If they go after, a center like Sean McEwen or David Beard out of Hamilton, then Logan Ferland is our starting right guard. But if they don't, then he's center, and all of a sudden we're looking for a right guard. So it's going to be really interesting to see where he ends up playing, just based off who the Riders are going to sign in the next, week and a half, 2 weeks here once free agency officially opens.
I think it's safe to say if they don't bring in a veteran center, he is hard penciled. He's like written in pen that he is the center because I don't see them trying a rookie at center. Like that's not going to happen. So
they had to a couple of years ago with Logan Bandy, and that didn't work out well. So,
in fairness, nothing along the offensive line worked out over that stretch.
Touche.
The only thing that worked in that stretch was us missing Dan Clark, which we never thought was going to happen.
Zach Fry is the next name. A guy who really got a lot of playing time last year. His first real meaningful playing time in the CFL after being drafted a few years ago. Left guard, and I expect him to be, starting left guard again this year, barring something weird happening. But Fry, another guy who's stepped up. We've waited on him for a couple of years, and development is there, and his time is now to be a full-time CFL starter.
And that's it. Like especially when it comes to those Canadian offensive linemen, I think the instinct is to why aren't they playing? Why aren't they playing? Like we need to get them playing. Fry took a few years to get his seasoning in. Like
It takes time.
and he has shown he is good for it. So yeah, I think he definitely proved that. Like, don't get me wrong, signing Sevier was still a good plan last year, but the fact that he got injured right away and Fry had to step in showed that Fry was the guy they drafted.
If we go into camp or into game one of the season with Zach Fry and Logan Ferland as our guards, I'm going to be thrilled. I think that's a good pairing. I think he has shown that they put their faith in the right guy, and he's ready to take that next step to be your, confirmed starter going into a season.
Daniel Johnson next on the list, draft pick from last year or 2 years ago.
Last year.
Was in training camp last year. Went back to school, finished off his last year, and is back for this year. So right now on paper would be the 6th lineman, possibly, if you look at what they have under contract right now. But young guy, going to develop him. Obviously, probably practice roster is where he's going to start the season, if not on one of the injured lists to stash him. But it'll be his first real season with the team.
He's a big dude too, if I remember correctly. Like I think he's got all the all the intangibles that they want. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when they actually bring him in.
Braden Knoll, guy that was with the Argos when Corey Mace was there, came in last year when all the injuries hit. I think he might have got in a little bit, but didn't get a lot of playing time if he did. But a guy that can provide some depth right now, and maybe he has the inside track on 6th man right now, based on who they have currently under contract. But just a guy with familiarity with Corey Mace, and yeah.
At very worst, Camp Body is going to push your younger guys. You got to set that bar somewhere. So,
and finally Noah Zur, who right now is penciled in as one of the starting guards at right guard, could be the 6th man. Obviously, his career didn't start off well with the BC Lions, bounced around a little bit, and has landed here at home in Saskatchewan, and really, because of all the injuries, got playing time last year. And not that he was, a standout by any means, but you didn't hear them call his name, which for an offensive lineman is a very good thing. He was good. He was dependable. There wasn't a lot to dislike about what he did last year on the roster. So I'm more than happy with him coming back this year, and hopefully can push for, at the very least, 6th offensive lineman, and should be on the game day roster.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong, like the hype for Zur coming out of the U of S was big. Like they thought he was I think they were actually talking about him about being like the Riders' first draft pick that year. That was one of the draft stories going into it. Obviously, BC got him before we did, but yeah, his career didn't start off the way he wanted it, I'm certain. But the fact that he's turned into a serviceable player is a lot more than other guys can say.
If you're talking about a 6th lineman, serviceable, dependable, versatile, those are all things that you want. I think he provides those. I still hope that the Riders are aggressive in free agency. But if he is that 6th guy, it's not a bad spot to be in the slightest.
All right, well, let's shift to the pending free agents, the Canadians. And here's where it gets interesting for me, is because you're looking at potentially Noah Zer as of right now on paper as a starter as the right guard. You have Philip Blake, Peter Godber, and Ryan Sevier all slated to hit free agency. I don't mind losing one or two. I think losing all three of them, that would have me concerned. Philip Blake, we'll start with him. Just injury prone. We were happy a couple years ago when they brought him back after letting him walk, him and Bladek, and then Shepley left all around the same time, and the Riders' Canadian offensive linemen just lost all their depth whatsoever, and they had nothing. So they righted it wrong then, but since bringing him back, he's been constantly injured. And with his age, I know it's nice that he's versatile and can play, all five positions on the offensive line. But again, I said it earlier, your best ability is availability, and he just hasn't proved that to us in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I definitely think that if any of them is gone for sure, it is him, unless he's willing to take a massive hometown discount to stay here.
If it's a vet bare minimum,
Yeah.
then I would at least bring him into training camp and see if he can keep up with the younger guys.
But I could totally
put $1 more than that, I probably wouldn't do it.
I could totally see a team that's struggling to solidify their offensive line, especially with his passport, throwing a little bit of money his way to bring him in. But yeah, you're right. You have to be on the field, and he hasn't been there. So I think it's safer to say we can move on. Honestly, out of those three guys, I think Sevier is probably the most likely to be signed back here. I know we need a center, but I don't see them bringing Godber back. I just don't.
I think if I had to rank the likelihood of us signing those three in particular, it's Ryan Sevier at the very top, and then a big drop to both Peter Godber and Blake. I think Blake, the one advantage to him is he's obviously well rested over the last couple of seasons. I think he's played a quarter and a half.
Yeah,
Doesn't have a lot of miles on those bones over the last couple of years, but 2 years and not a full game played, you got to move on at that point. And if somebody wants to pay him, so be it. But if you do bring him in, there better not be a single dollar in signing bonus. That's a playtime bonus kind of contract. And Sevier's the obvious choice to keep around. He's still relatively young, not far off of an all-star season, and provides that depth and that versatility on the interior that we need.
And I think we're going to get our answer next week. Once the tampering window is officially opened, we'll get an idea, or at least Jeremy O'Day will get an idea of what his offensive line is going to look like, who's going to be coming here. If no other players seem interested and are like, you know what, I don't really like that offer, and the Riders aren't willing to change their offer for a Beard, for a McEwen, whoever it is, then I can see them circling back to probably Ryan Sevier and saying, you know what, here is an offer. We would like to have you back. So, but without knowing what's going to happen, I mean, we're just a few days away from getting a better understanding, but that's going to be the one I'm really interested in what they're doing. Obviously, defensive line and defensive backs are a huge thing for what this team's going to do, but offensive line, you got to win in the trenches. And I mean, the pass protection was good last year. It was the run blocking, which is weird for a young line or a line that has a lot of changes. You would think that the run blocking would be the better one, as they're the aggressors on the play. And for whatever reason, that wasn't doing it. So got to get some guys in that are going to, mow defenders down and just pancake them, put them on their ass. Like, that's what they need to find some mean offensive linemen to come in. And I mean, you're paying a lot of money to some running backs right now. You want to use them if you're going to pay them the money. And if you're not going to give them an offensive line to block for them, then why are you paying guys money, right? Like, if you're not going to spend the money on O-line, then why are you spending it on running backs? So I expect...
Hey, well, that doesn't make his money until November.
That's what we were told. But we talked about the health of AJ Ouellette is going to be key for this year. Hopefully he comes in and he's fully 100% healthy, ready to go. Well, let's keep him that way. Let's get this offensive line locked down and get some nasty in there, because that's one thing we were missing. And as well as they played last year, maybe they overachieved, but it was the coaching of Edwin Harrison that had them, doing really well. And maybe it was compared to what we saw over the last couple seasons, but that O-line was significantly better, but it still needs to, take that next level to keep us in the conversation for a Grey Cup contender. That's how they're going to beat Winnipeg, is in the trenches, or BC or whatever. They got to win in the trenches, and offensive line, it starts there.
There is one name that you are missing on that offensive line free agent list, and he was an all-star for us
I know exactly
O-line.
where you're going.
And he remains unsigned, and it's scary. It's way too close to free agency. Micah Johnson. We all assumed he'd be signed by now. And what a guy to have around as that seventh offensive lineman, because he did not look out of place when he did have to line up. Oh,
When he played almost a full half there, that was unbelievable. I know there was the one game here in Saskatchewan where he played the last couple snaps when Reed got hurt and when he blocked for a Hail Mary pass kind of thing. But when he played almost a full half, that was impressive. So yeah, I don't care what it costs. Bring Micah Johnson back.
Kidding.
All right. Well, there's our look at the offensive line. We got to get to, and kickers are people too. We'll talk special teams.
Are they?
That's what I was told. We'll just go in alphabetical order of who we have, and it's going to bounce around between just punters, kickers, and the long snapper. This will be quick, I promise. As much as a deep dive as we could possibly do into 6 players, this will be quick.
It's a kiddie pool.
30 minutes later.
Joe Couch, global punter. He's going to come in and
he's an Australian.
Yep, he's going to come in and push for that job from Adam Korsak.
Worst case, we'll draft 2 more in the upcoming international player draft, or global draft.
They're going to come up with a cooler name on that. Not just a global draft.
Just call it the Australian punter draft.
Cool.
That's all it's become.
Jorgen Hughes, long snapper. Obviously, he has
he's a rider as long as he wants to be.
If you've never heard of him, it's because he's damn good at his job. There has not been bad snaps at all. He's great on special teams, running down the field and on coverage. So, yeah, as long as he wants to be a Saskatchewan Rough Rider, he's going to be a Saskatchewan Rough Rider. So there's
he's the longest serving rider too, isn't he?
Sure is.
Yep. There's no concern at all with Jorgen Hughes.
He's the best in the business, and I will fight anybody who disagrees with that.
I have to take a look. Maybe I'll do it really quick here. What did they trade to get him? Because he was a 3rd round pick, and they traded something away to get him. And now that I look back at it, I looked at it not too long ago, and I just kind of laughed. Oh, Corey Watson. Because he was with I think he was signed with the Edmonton Elks or was drafted.
Yeah,
by
he
the
was.
Elks,
He was signed with Edmonton.
Yeah. He was traded for Corey Watson. So
I think we won that trade.
There wasn't very many things that was 2015. That would have been Beef. That's his nickname, Beaver. Why am I blanking on his name? Brendan Taman would have made that trade. Yeah.
His nickname's Beaver?
Yeah. You know what? Well, I have his number. We should bring him on one time. At the very least, I know if we talk to Jamie Nye knows this story, and someone will give us the deets on why his nickname is Beav.
Huh.
Yeah, there you go. Adam Korsak, next on the list. Obviously, our punter from last year, very good punter. And I was impressed with the directional kicking that he did. Except for when he kicked it to Janarian Grant. Stop doing that.
There's an easy.
I don't care who our punter is. Just don't kick it to him.
There's an easy way around that. Sign him. Even if you staple him to the bench, sign him so he cannot return against us.
He was on my list of signings, and I'm like, nah, that's too obvious. Like, it's just.
Well, we're going to talk about Mario Alford in a second, and I think we're all assuming that. Well, we'll just do it now. Mario Alford. We assume that he's a free agent, pending free agent. We assume that he's gone. Started out the season really well, but then decided that he didn't want to get hit anymore and just ran out of bounds instead of running up the field. And
in his defense, if I ran that many for a touchdown that kept on getting called back to holding calls, I'd probably just quietly quit too. Because that's exactly what he did. He's like, screw it, I'm going to the sideline.
Yeah, he definitely quietly quit last year. So we're assuming that Mario Alford is gone. And a lot of people, and I've read a lot about this over the last couple of days, really, really think the Riders are going to be active players and should go after Janarian Grant. If for no other reason than, like we said, just to not have him return touchdowns against us every single game he plays against us.
Could you imagine his numbers if he played 9 games at Taylor Field? Sorry, Mosaic Stadium.
You need a time machine for Taylor Field, but yes, I see.
Be a really awkward game out in the middle of nowhere, but like 14 touchdowns would be a realistic number for his season, just based on his career at Mosaic.
And Darian Durant on the Sports Gauge was saying that the Riders need playmakers, and this is one of them. Yep. But do you guys think, realistically, like, yes, we would like a guy like Janarian Grant on the team. Realistically, do you think the Riders go out and spend money on a kick returner?
No.
Yes.
I don't know. Like, and don't get me wrong. O'Day made that move to get Alford out of Montreal.
Well, it's for a 6th round pick.
Yeah, like smart move, because that was when Worthy returned one on the Riders, and so that made Worthy the Montreal kick returner. So he went and got Alford. So smart move on him. So yes, he understands the importance of a kick returner. I just think Grant's number is going to be too high, and someone will give it to him.
I don't know that they spend the money on Janarian Grant, but I can't remember. I don't have the list in front of me, but there was a few potential kick returners available this year.
Devontae
and I think
available.
Yep. I think they go out and make a move for one. Mario Alford in his prime showed this organization what a good kick returner can do for them and what a difference it can make. And I think they go into next year with one of the 3, and I wish I could remember the third. I know Letcher was another one, but he signed back in Montreal.
Peyton Logan's also available.
Logan. Yep.
Yeah.
And was it Terry Williams out of BC? I think
it was maybe that.
So no,
but
Williams is not available.
But there was I thought Williams got cut late in the year.
Well, he's not on the free agent list. That's all I know.
Yeah. Either way, I think that's a spot. I don't think they go big and sign a Janarian Grant, but I think they may look at one of those other veteran options and at least put an offer in.
See, I'm with Greg. I don't think I want to say it's not worth doing, but I think you have Dante Myers who can handle it. And when you look at who have been really good kick returners for the Riders in the past, you look at a guy like Tristan Jackson, Corey Holmes, they weren't just pure kick returners. That's what Mario Alford was. Are you going to want to spend that money on just somebody who's only going to be a kick returner? Or maybe it's Janarian Grant that they do want to go after. Are you going to put him in the offense? Because we were screaming for a couple of years, just get Mario Alford a couple plays a game, some end arounds, some jet sweeps, hitch screens. I just think that the money for the Riders is better spent on upgrading offensive line, defensive backs. And I get the need for, a kick returner and how important that is. Kicking's a third of the game in the CFL. I get that. But I think you can have one of your defensive backs, one of your young guys, another receiver, whoever you bring in, somebody can be a good kick returner.
like a guy like Mark and Michelle, he can both play receiver and return kicks. So maybe that is your two-phase guy, something like
Well,
that. But yeah, I don't think you want to pay a guy just to be a specialist.
look at what Toronto did last year. They actually managed to get Janarian Grant involved on occasion on the offense. I don't think he's a full-time player out on the offense. I don't think he's an every down or every snap kind of guy, but
No.
he is a guy that can also come in and contribute offensively, which is where I think if you make that splash, you go after a guy who you feel can also contribute at least on occasion offensively as well. And he's a guy that can absolutely do that.
Well, at the
Well,
very
look at
least,
what Edmonton did with look what Edmonton did with Leak last year. Like Edmonton didn't do a lot right, but that was one of them. And bringing Leak into both the kicking game and offense gave them another level that, for some reason, they only did against us, but didn't no one else.
at the very least, bring in somebody who can come in and be a decoy on offense. Have him run the jet sweep, but don't actually hand it off to him. Do a play action and bootleg out of there. Like, just if that's one extra person the defense has to worry about, oh, he's only coming in for this play. Well, okay, there's a package for him. Well, haha, psych, right? Like, you got to be able to do something with them. So in terms of just a pure returner, I hope that we don't have just a pure returner. I hope that whoever it is going to at least offer more than Mario Alford did over the last couple of years. Finally, the kickers. Brett Lothar and Ben Hadley. We'll start with Lothar. Obviously, eating the crow. I did last year. I think a lot of people did, but obviously
We all did.
Had that bad game where he missed 4 kicks and came back after that and only missed 1 the rest of the year. And I think that was an extra point. He was just absolutely money after that. Was the best kicker in the second half of the league last year. And again, I fully expect that out of Brett Lothar every single year, is to be the best kicker in the CFL, and 2025 is no different. And I'm just happy that they are just bringing in somebody to push him. Ultimately, that's what I wanted last year, and it never happened. Hopefully, right off the bat from training camp, that does help.
Well,
I'm
talking to him at the...
I'm glad they're bringing someone in, but I'm not happy with who they brought in. Like, nothing against Hadley, but Eric Maximo's draft years this year, and he's going to be a hell of a kicker. Just saying.
Well, maybe wait till after the draft to complain about who they brought in. You never know who they're going to draft.
They're not going to draft another kicker. There's no way.
But we did get the chance to talk to him briefly at the player signing with Joe and Kean Schaefer-Baker, and it sounds like he's been spending his offseason preparing for the year. And I don't know, maybe I didn't get the sense that that's a normal thing for him, the way he talked about it. But he sounded amped up for 2025, Brett Lothar did. So I hope he comes in with that little chip on his shoulder that he earned after that bad game that seemed to carry him through, because he was money after that. I think he missed 1 kick, and it was a 60 plus yarder into the wind.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, no, he was never making that kick. That with the wind, he had it. With against the wind, that was never happening. So I'm not going to hold that one against him. But he's things are a lot brighter now than they were halfway through last year at the kicker spot.
Side note about that signing, the Rider Store staff is amazing how well that line moved. I could not believe how fast that line went.
Yeah, they were there taking pictures for people and getting everybody through. And it was nice to be able to shake Joe's hand and wish him luck and all that. And when I was there with Kean Schaefer-Baker and Brett Lothar, Brett actually looked me right in the eye and said, "What do you think of our chances this year? Like, what do you really think?" And I said, there's something special in that building. And then he said that 2024 was a great step for us. And yeah, we're happy with, the leap that they took in 1 year of a regime. But you could tell that even he knows there's something different about this year. The expectations are going to be higher. And I think the players know that. And the players should expect that. And I think they're ready to take that on. I really, really do. There's just something special in that building happening right now. And the continuity that we're going to see, it's going to be good for this team. I think it's going to be a very good 2025 for the Riders.
I stand by this, and I understand act of God, whatever you want. That Western final was in Mosaic, not in Winnipeg. Riders go to the Grey Cup, hands down, no
Freaking
question.
gust of wind. BS
Just
gust of wind.
Just a random gust of wind cost the Riders first place, which basically let the Bombers moonwalk into the Grey Cup to lose again, and Zach Claris lose a finger. But besides the point.
Well, there's our deep dive on special teams for the Riders as well. So we'll see, because they should be active at least in maybe in free agency for the special teams. We'll see if they're going to go after a returner. That'll be something we know on Sunday when the Ed Hervey tampering window opens. I'm sure Hervey's already got contracts ready to go for Edmonton. He'll have 3 agreements done within the first minute.
We know he's already been talking to people. That's why this window exists. Now he has to break the tampering window by tampering before the tampering window.
It's the CFL. Everybody talks to everybody. You can't offer them a contract yet. You can do that on Sunday, but they're talking. I guarantee it. They won't say it, but they are. And next week we're going to be talking about that here on the Piffles podcast. But for now, I think that's it for Rider News this week. Thanks for joining us here on the Piffles podcast. Of course, the show is brought to you by our great friends at Dairy Queen on Elphinstone Street and Sass Drive in Regina. Special thanks, of course, to Kathy Festian of Royal LePage Regina Realty and Churchill Brewing Company for their support making the show happen. I forgot. There is one more pending free agent who I think the Riders should really go after, and it was very close to being on my list. Steve, I know he's really number 1 on your list. I don't even need to say it. You know where it's going. Bring in.
I've got a number 1 for you.
Say his name and he appears. Steve believes in Chris Drevy. Steve believes in Chris Drevy. Cause they love him in London and Paris and Tokyo, America, Scotland and Canada.
If I can't be happy, neither can you, Steve. So I want it to happen. Bring in Chris Drevler.
And my nemesis will never come.
And
He
Sean
can't play in
Lennon.
the league anymore.
I'm sure.
Never, ever tell people the things you don't like. Never.
That's the Piffles podcast this week. This is Tyler Gilbert with Ghost Behind Your Mind.
The ghost behind your